Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tell Me Why, a short, sharp podcast for busy Beatles people in the know or busy Beatles people who want to be in the know. And today, I am so honored to have one of my dear friends, my special guest. And I've given this a lot of thought over the night, and I've decided that my friend is very, very much like the Beatles themselves in three very important ways. First of all, he's extremely intelligent. And you can tell that by one quick glance at the covers of his books, even before you open them, because wit, as we all know, is a marker of intelligence. But titles of his book include The Beatles Get Back to Abbey Road. Got it? Or The Beatles Finally Let It Be. Or The Beatles From Rubber Soul to Revolver. His books are meticulously researched and they are extremely well written. In fact, I have a master's degree in English and taught composition. And if I send him something, he always sends me edits back. And they're not things that, okay, you could do this, you couldn't do this. They're great edits. I wish he had time to edit, but he does not. He is a very intelligent. He is an attorney by day in New Orleans, Louisiana, and a Beatles author, a prolific and respected Beatles author by night. And the second way he is like the Beatles is that he is extremely hardworking. Yes, the Beatles were gifted. Yes, they were talented. Yes, they were intelligent, but they were also hardworking, and that makes all the difference. Lots of intelligent, gifted people who do nothing with that talent. Hard work is the key. Let me show you very quickly. This is show and tell, the body of his work. The Beatles on Apple Records. This is also a weightlifting exercise. The 2-volume Beatles story on Capitol Records. I mean, how thorough can you get? The Beatles, and here's another one of those clever titles, The Beatles Swan Song. The Beatles solo on Apple Records. This one is really heavy. All of the solo records and releases. And one that I use every single day in the writing of the John Lennon series, The Beatles for Sale on Parlophone Records, another massive tome of information. These are all superb. If you don't have, you really need to get them. There is also my favorite of the books, and I love The Beatles for Sale on Parlophone Records, but you cannot beat The Beatles Are Coming. It's exactly what it says it is. And it is probably the best presentation of the Beatles' arrival and impact in America, that how they were received, what they did, what they put out, when they did it. It is an impressive work. That is not to count his new series, which includes the first one, The Beatles and Sgt. Pepper, A Fan's Perspective, and this kicked it all off. He also did The Beatles Finally Let It Be that we talked about, the Beatles White Album, and the launch of Apple, which is a bonus that you get. And then he had The Beatles Get Back to Abbey Road, we've already talked about, Beatles Rubber Soul to Revolver, beautiful books in slipcovers with posters, collectors' posters, the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour and Yellow Submarine, and the latest book, which we'll be talking about today, and that's not even all of them, there are others, The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, and more. So hardworking is the name of the game. But the main way that he is like the Beatles is that, as John Lennon famously said, I'm a record man. He's a record man. He can tell you every record, every pressing, every slipcover, and there are many for every record, every EP, every collection, whatever you want to know about Beatles music, he knows it. And so it is a great honor today to introduce a gentleman with whom I have shared Beatles Fest West, Beatles at the Ridge. He has gone to Abbey Road on the River. I have not. The Beatles Grammy Symposium, we both shared at the Grammy Museum of Mississippi. He has spoken at the Britannia Britannia Theater in New Orleans, introducing films on the Beatles. He goes every July to the Beatles Festival in NOLA. And most of all, he has spoken for these many years at the Fest for Beatles fans in New York, at the New York Metro Fest, in Chicago, and back in the days when we started, also in Los Angeles and even Las Vegas. Wow, he's a busy man. Welcome to the show, my friend, Bruce Spizer. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Jude, always a pleasure to talk Beatles with someone who knows her stuff.
Well, it's our favorite topic, right?
Absolutely.
And did you love the Chicago Fest?
I had a great time there. It was, look, it's always fun getting together with your friends. And then, of course, the musical guests and the music itself. So, yeah, I really have a good time at the fest.
Yeah, and it's good because I could tell you spend time working really hard. So it's great to see you getting a chance to kick back and have a pint and talk to people and relax for a while. Well, this new book is like all the others. I'm going to let everyone see. Beautiful cover. Let me show you the front. You get a poster inside. It's a very impressive two posters. Your first books concentrated really on one LP. And then you had three that concentrated on two, like the Magical Mystery Tour and Yellow Submarine or Rubber Soul and Revolver. And now with this book, this very Lennon-centric book, you've gotten back to one album's focus for this book. Why did you decide to return to one album for Hard Day's Night and More?
Well, sometimes it's a numbers game in that what I try to do is talk about what was going on in the UK. So if you were living in the UK and you were reading the music magazines that came out once a week, what would you be learning about it? And then what would what was going on in the US? And so when you got to something like Rubber Soul and Revolver, sure, you could do a book on either one, but then what do you do with yesterday and today? So that kind of was why I combined them. And then Please Please Me and With the Beatles seemed to go well because that was Meet the Beatles' second album, were songs that would have to put off at another time. So, well, where do I put that? Well, they came out, in later in 64. So that would have to fall into a book on a hard day's night. And the book began in my mind getting bigger and bigger when I started doing the mental page count. And I thought, well, I can't do a hard day's night to help because that would be like a telephone book in the old days when telephone books were that thick. So the decision was made, we'll just keep it to be a hard day's night and more. And the and more would be the Beatles' second album, a lot of the VJ releases, the Something New album on Capitol. You get the idea. So that was plenty for a book. And also those German recordings. The next book is going to be Beatles for Sale for Help, which in the US translate to Beatles 65, Beatles 6, and the Help soundtrack. So it just made sense to kind of do the break that way. And that's why I did it. As a lawyer, I try to think, and logically, what is the best way to present something to a court? And in this case, what's the best way to present something to the people who are going to be reading the books?
Yeah, well, you did. And I want to give people a glance inside the book so that they can see. One of the hardest tasks that you have as a writer is coming up with illustrations and photographs. It's very difficult to get permissions. It's very expensive to get books, but
Yes.
your books are loaded with beautiful pages that are artistic collages. I don't know who does the layout for you, but they are absolutely gorgeous.
Well, we need to give her credit. Diana Thornton of Crescent City Music Services. Diana has been with me from day one, from the very first book. And it's an absolute pleasure to work with someone that talented and that wonderful a person. For now, we're going on 26, 27 years doing these books together.
Yeah,
So a big hand of applause for Diana.
really, she is extremely talented. So you're not only going to get accurate information, but you are going to get a feast for your eyes. They are really, really well done and hardback, durable. I use mine to death. And a lot of my Beatles books that are sitting over here on the right are held together with rubber bands. Not so with Bruce Spizer's books. They will endure the test of time and the test of research. Now, Bruce, ordinarily our tagline is tell me why, but I have to ask a question. There's no way I can use tell me why because I want you to tell me more or tell me what the and more is in your new book, A Hard Day's
Yeah,
Night and More.
right. Well, like the other books in the series, we have the Hard Day's Night album in the UK, but then let's not forget in the US, United Artists did a soundtrack album, the Something New album. We have to cover all those crazy releases on VJ and the VJ subsidiary Tolly. Such, of course, as a Twist and Shout single, George's Do You Want to Know a Secret? And then also Love Me Do coming out as a single. After it did in the UK, it was number 17 in the UK. It was number one in the US because by then the Beatles were really big. And then also the Hamburg recordings. Most of those were released in 1964. So that was the logical place to put that in the and more. And then in addition to, after Something New, Capitol decided to pull the single with Matchbox and Slow Down as a single that came out. And then VJ, because they had to give up their rights to the Beatles on October 15th of 64, they rushed things out. They reissued Introducing the Beatles with a magazine type gatefold cover called Songs, Pictures, and Stories of the Fabulous Beatles. And if you thought you were buying a new album, when you pulled the album out, the album said Introducing the Beatles, exact same album. They also did a very strange album called The Beatles versus the Four Seasons. And if you pulled out the Beatles album in that, it was Introducing the Beatles. There's kind of a familiar theme here. VJ also, to try to get more sales out of their four main Beatles singles, printed them on their oldies subsidiary. So, and then to make sure people might want to buy them, even if they had the singles to begin with, they put it in an attractive picture sleeve for Christmas. And United Artists did something similar. They went ahead and said, this would make a great Christmas present for people, our soundtrack album, in case they haven't gotten it yet. So record stores could purchase it with banners that would have this beautiful holiday banner and would have, from and to on it. Very nice. And VJ also had this strange album, the Beatles and Frank Ifield on stage, which is a very strange album because there were no live recordings. Very deceptive title. And it shipped about 50,000 units and about 25,000 of them got returned. And VJ decided later on, why don't we put a more attractive cover on it and just, make it like the Beatles, make that real big and in fine print, Frank Ifield. So they did that. And that album's extremely rare and valuable. So, but the thing I try to do in the books, as you say, is I want the book to be as visually exciting as the information it contains. So when you first get the book, you could flip through it and not read a word, and you'd have your money's worth just flipping through it. And we also have, in addition to the standard edition, the collector's edition, which Jude was showing, which is signed and numbered, and also has the posters and the bookmarks in the case. And if you order the book from the website, even if it's just a standard edition, I always sign the books. And if you want them personalized, you let me know on the website. And look, if you bought the book somewhere else and you see me at a Beatles convention, if you lug it up to my table, I'll be happy to sign it.
Oh, you spend so much time talking to everyone and answering questions. And that's part of the connection is that you are willing. I remember the very first Beatles festival I ever went to. You talked with me for a long time after your presentation about the Beatles being at the Empire Theater by the Sunnyside Skiffle Group and gave me some suggestions about how I could get more information on that. And, it was people really appreciate that touch, Bruce. So thank you for all you do for fans as well.
Glad to do that. And of course, all the books in the album series have what we call fan recollections. And Jude is in the most recent book and has been in a good number of them. And what this does, it allows just normal, everyday people to write about their recollections. A lot of the themes, believe it or not, are people bonding with their parents over Beatles music. I didn't see that one coming, but a lot of those and other people like going to a hard day's night and complaining because everyone was screaming and then seeing it 2 weeks later in a drive-in and enjoying it because they could hear it because they were sitting in their car. So a lot of fun little stories like that, and sometimes we get more than the everyday people. such as, I've had Billy Joel do a fan recollection. Also had a very From the Heart one by Peter Tork, a Pat Denizio of a Smithereens. And in this book, Patty Boyd does a fan recollection of how she met George on the set of A Hard Day's Night. Very fitting for the book, of course. And
And
your fan recollection is wonderful in the new book.
thank you very much. One of my very favorite fan recollections, I believe, was in the first book, the Sergeant Pepper book, was a fan recollection by Mark Lewison, and you have a photo
Yes.
of him wearing his Sergeant Pepper uniform, right? That his mother.
Yeah, what he did was he cut up the patches that came with it, and he had the badge, the patches, and the fake mustache. It was priceless.
It's a great, great photograph. Now, do you have all of the books in this album series still available? And if so, how can people get them? And also, how can they follow you on social media?
Okay, well, every now and then I am on, Facebook, and I hate to call it X, but since that's what it's called, every now and then there. My website is very easy. It's just Beatle, Beatle.net, Net. Doesn't get any easier than that. Don't put the S in there. Don't call it com, Beatle.net. And, that's really the easiest way. All the books in the album series are still available, although I am beginning to run low on the White Album book and the Abbey Road book, in the hardcover editions on those. The collector's edition of the Sergeant Pepper is starting to run low. The other ones we have, fairly good stock on for a while anyway. The next book that I will sell out, and four of my books have sold out, the VJ book, the two Capitol books, and the Beatles on Apple book, and the Swan book, so that's five actually, have sold out. And the Beatles solo on Apple is getting close to selling out. So for those of you out there that have been thinking about buying it, don't put it off because it could very well be sold out by the end of the year. And when these books sell out, as you know, they immediately go up from $50 to $100 to as high as $300, $400, $500 or even more.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And
Yep.
and lest you think that we get any of that money, we do not.
Do not.
Shivering Inside went for $1,499 last week, and they did not even send me a note of any kind, a pound note or a regular note. So to them, but no, they're excellent, and you will enjoy every single page, and you will definitely get information that you can trust. I recently got a new DVD about John Lennon and was reading the booklet that came along with it. I was very surprised to find that John's comment about being more popular than the Beatles was made on the very evening that he did the Ed Sullivan show for the first time in February.
Gee, that's really interesting. That might only be off by over 2 years.
There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of it is absolutely wrong. You will not get that in these books. They are spot on. You're getting what actually happened. So, okay, so Bruce, you've already connected to one great John Lennon quote, "I'm a record man," but we always tell me why by asking your favorite John Lennon quote and which one speaks to you, and which one, has meant something in your life. So which one would that be for you?
Well, I'm going to cheat and do two. In my yearbook for senior picture and all, I was in a tree playing a guitar, and I quoted from Across the Universe, which I thought was very appropriate. But I think if you wanted a quote, the one that I seem to be saying more and more, because when you're as busy as I am and doing things, it's going to be, nobody told me there'd be days like this.
Amen. It is really true. But thank goodness that you do what you do, which I know is
The thing that you do, I guess that could be a song.
Or do what you do. Yes, we appreciate it. Those of us who are doing research use your books constantly with full confidence that we are getting the straight story. And all of the fans love it. They love your presentations. If you've never seen Bruce do the Lindy, that's on you. It's quite remarkable, isn't that?
The Freddie.
It was the Freddie. Yes, you need to see that. He is a great speaker. Come to the Fest for Beatles fans in the Hyatt in Jersey City. the New York Metro Fest, March 28th through the 30th, where he will be speaking on the main stage as well as doing at least 5, if not more, panels. We will guarantee you, as Mark and Carol Lapidus and Michelle Joni and Tilly do, that a splendid time is guaranteed for all. Bruce, thank you for being with us tonight.
Glad to do so. Always a pleasure, Jude.
Thank you for the books. Thank you for the hard work. And thank you for being a record man.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Good night, everyone. We will see you on the next Tell Me Why. Until then, ta-ra and shine on.